Okay, here we go. Welcome to the Hometown Hollywood podcast, where you can find advice, inspiration, and strategies for success from talented people that are making a name for themselves inside the film industry, but outside of the major film cities. Here's your host, Travis Myers.
Oh, yeah. That was soothing. I loved it. The inflection on my name was
Travis Myers.
It gave me chills.
That's good. That's what I'm here for. If I can give somebody chills, you know. Mostly I try to do that with the camera and the light, but if my voice makes it happen.
Whatever works, whatever it takes. That's I guess the number one lesson from today is Ray Rushing will do whatever it takes to get the emotion through to the audience.
To bring the chills, that's it.
Bring the chills.
I'm updating my website. Ray Rushing, bringing the chills. It's my new Twitter bio.
Hello, my name is Travis Myers, and you're listening to the Hometown Hollywood podcast. Today's guest is Ray Rushing, a cinematographer based out of small-town Ohio. Ray is what I like to call the chillest of chill. As you'll hear in the interview, he has a crazy journey into filmmaking, which I found really inspiring. He's got a ton of talent, so don't let the pit talk fool you. You'll find out what that means later. My only problem with Ray is that he lives too far away. Because I know if we did live closer, I'd be trying to take him out to lunch all the time to talk shop and bounce lighting ideas off him. And the pun was intended. Bounce lighting. Haha, laugh, laugh. I could have talked to Ray for hours about himself and the projects he's worked on, and I know you'll leave this episode feeling the same. In this interview, you'll learn about Ray's name change over the years, being in the pit, his black and white TV, how he almost accidentally became a history teacher, teaching Final Cut at Apple, how a random Twitter post can lead you to a job at Quicken Loans and taking headshots of LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavs, and how having friends willing to fight for him led to his first major DP gig with professional golfer Ricky Fowler. I'm so glad I got to talk with Ray about his career journey, and I'm confident you'll enjoy what he has to say. So let's jump right into the show. All right, so first question, I know this is what the audience is dying to know. How are you on a film set? Would you say that you're pretty relaxed, easygoing, or is Ray rushing?
Well, yeah, it's kind of an ironic name. No,
it can't be the first time you've heard that either.
It's not at all. It's not the first time I've used it personally. I oftentimes, like on the phone, will have people misunderstand. You know, they'll ask for my name, and I'll say Ray Rushing, and they'll say Russian. I'm like, no, not Russian, rushing. And then I'll spell it. And then I'll say, rushing like I'm in a hurry. And then I feel like just a total jerk because it sounds like I'm saying like, let's move this along. Yeah. So I do it all the time because it's funny, but it's so not true. Yeah, the name is pretty ironic in my case. And I can tell you the story. I have a whole story behind my name, which is kind of a little different, but because it's the third name that I've had. I was born Renato Adalberto Cuellar.
Whoa.
That's my dad's name and my grandfather's name. And my parents divorced when I was a baby, and my mom didn't like him, so she changed it to Ray Allen is my now middle name, and Ludicky is her maiden name, and then Rushing is my stepdad. So I got the name Rushing, even though I'm very rarely in a hurry. So it's pretty ironic that I landed there. But yeah, on set, I'm actually pretty laid back. I'm a big planner and prepper, and I tend to be pretty chill through that whole process. I sort of weirdly don't get nervous or really stressed out before shoots. I just kind of get into my process, and I think I get to set and I feel pretty comfortable generally. And when I don't feel comfortable, it's probably because something out of my control isn't going well, or things have derailed in some way that hopefully wasn't my fault. Yeah, I'm a pretty laid back. I think I like for set to be a lot of fun. I think it's what's special for me is working with the team. And so I try to squeeze every bit of, fun. And I've been around people that get super uptight and are just a ball of nerves, and I understand it. But it just is kind of not how I do things. And I've done a lot of like high pressure stuff over my career. And I think why I've been able to succeed in those situations is is kind of just that. I'm pretty laid back. Now, after a shoot, I like kind of lose my mind. I get super stressed when we're done. And I kind of replay everything in my head, and I get really insecure, and I think about the things that didn't go well, and I dwell on them, and I get really, really kind of worked up, and can kind of go into, on bigger jobs, I can kind of go into a bit of a funk after a shoot.
Yeah.
I don't entirely know why. I think I tend to like live in the past in my head in a way. And so I'm not worried about the things that could go wrong. I'm worried about the things that did go wrong. And so, that's kind of where the nervous energy hits me is after the fact, which is kind of always strange.
Interesting. I've talked with a couple of people, and they've I experienced this thing, like especially because I used to do a bunch of 48-hour film races, and like there's this high, I guess, of being on set and everything's flowing creatively, and then there's also this point where it's like, why am I doing this? I should have ended this a long time ago. It's like I go from the ultimate high to the lowest low I've ever been.
Yeah,
and then at the end, it kind of comes back together and like equal. But it's like almost every time, and so I like try to hide it. Like when I'm like, oh gosh, what do I do?
Yeah, I totally get it. No, my wife has commented on it many times, and I think I get somewhat unbearable after the fact. And just like, man, just forget it. If something did go wrong and it was in any way my fault, even if it was something super minor, which I haven't had anything really crazy go wrong. Just, it's always been little things like shots that didn't go well or whatever. But yeah, my wife can tell you, like, I'm kind of for about a week, it's, small shoots or whatever, it's just a job, you come and you do it. But bigger stuff, it's like, a good week at least, sometimes a month, I'm just in a bad headspace. So yeah, I can kind of definitely go there. We call it the pit. My wife will just say, like, are you in the pit? I'm like, yeah.
It has a name.
I'm in the pit.
That's how you know how serious it is.
I'm in the pit. Give me some space.
Do you think being in the pit makes you better? Because I noticed a lot of people on the show, they're like, they kind of hate on their own stuff sometimes, and which I think is really surprising, because I only invite people on the show if I really like their work and I think they do great stuff. And so, but I noticed there's like this kind of humility where they always see things that they could do better. And I'm almost starting to think like kind of being in the pit helps you like reevaluate and like fine tune all the small little details. Do you think that helps you become a better cinematographer?
Yeah, I think so. I think in the process, it doesn't feel great. I'd kind of rather not have it be part of it. And I think it was something that it took me a while to recognize what was going on. It was just like, I would just be down and I didn't really know why. And I think once I did, years ago, kind of figure that out, then yes, I was able to tap in and go, why am I feeling down? And sometimes it isn't even just it absolutely can sometimes be things that I'm unhappy with. And that's always a great chance. Now it's a great opportunity for me to go, what literally could I have done differently? And sometimes if that's like literal mistakes, it's going, oh, well, now I know I'm going to, not to talk down on myself, because I'm sure people do it, but or tell negative stories. But I had a shoot not too long ago where we didn't have like a normal setup, where I tend to trust my ACs to do a lot, and if I can be away from the camera, I will. And we had a shot where I was near the camera, the AC was near the camera, but neither one of us hit record. And so we had a take. It didn't affect the overall project, but we had a take where like someone called cut and I looked down and I was like, it's not rolling. And the AC looked down and he was like, it's not rolling. And we were both like, pointing at each other, jokingly, but, that's a situation where like, I can say like, maybe it happens again, but it won't be because I wasn't paying attention or I missed it. Like I now obsessively check even if it's not me who's rolling the camera. So yeah, it does help for that sort of stuff. I think oftentimes I can get into like a big picture sort of funk and going like, okay, that's like 3 or 4 or 5 or whatever number of projects in a row that I'm not super stoked about. That can be harder to do something about because it's, the very next job is not necessarily going to be something I'm stoked about. But in the big picture, and I think it's something I probably think about a lot, is where am I going? Like what's next? And I think that can be really good. I think that can come to a positive place. It pushes you. Even things that people are excited about that maybe I'm not. It makes me go, okay, well now I want to do the next thing that, steps it up to another level.
Yeah, for sure. We've talked a little bit about your on-set experience and then after a shoot. Let's go back to the very beginning. How did you get your start in cinematography? I saw on your website that you had a still photography background.
Yeah.
So where did the beginnings of Ray Rushing happen?
Yeah, well, it goes way back, but I'll try.
Yeah, that was kind of an interesting way to phrase that question. I guess your career, not like the very beginning of you as a person, but
all that stuff affects you, and it's always interesting. I think these are great times to reflect on all that. And I grew up in a small town, in the middle of nowhere in South Texas. Around nothing like this. I just was always the kid that was like different. Not that I was like, I don't know, picked on or something. I mean, I fit in, I played sports, I did all those things that you're supposed to do, but I just always felt like a bit of an outsider. And so I went to college. I always like loved movies, but that was never a thing that I thought was a job. We grew up really, really poor and in this small town. I mean, I'm a little older, so like this makes me sound really, really old. I'm not as old as this will sound, but like because we didn't have a lot of money and all that, like we just had a little black and white TV. And our town didn't have cable. I mean, we're talking like a town of a few hundred,
wow.
In the middle of nowhere. And so we had 3 channels growing up. Like that was it. And a clicker like on the TV. I mean, that was not maybe what most people had at the time, but it's just what my mom could afford,
Yeah.
So movies and TV was like this, it was like this magical thing to me. It was like a treat. It was like a kid who never eats candy. And then, it's like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory or something. It's like, it was this really special thing. We didn't have a movie theater in town. And we eventually, like, my mom remarried, we moved, we weren't wealthy, but we were better off and had a TV with an actual remote and was in color. And I like kind of just got obsessed, with watching TV and it was like a big part of my life, in high school but still never really connected it to like people made that. I just loved the stories. Like I would just get immersed and then I got a job in high school. My first job was actually working in a movie theater. And I would like get in trouble. I would be like sitting in the theater watching a movie, cause we would check theaters and whatever. And I would pop in and, you'd like check to see that the sound was good. And then I would inevitably, if it was a good movie, I would like sit down and I'd be like, oh, I'm going to be here for 10 minutes, and so, but still like really never like clued in that like that was a thing that you did. It was just like some part of my life that I really loved. And I think I'm kind of an introspective, person, just always in my own head and in some ways like imagining movies, I guess, and imagining stuff. And so, it just, movies can like totally suck me in. It's a little different now that I know how it's made, but growing up, it was like, man, I loved any chance I could get to watch a good film. And that was like the first Jurassic Park and going back even further to Indiana Jones. And like, I remember in high school, I wanted to be an archaeologist because I saw Indiana Jones and and I was always like cluing into these things that were, I think, adjacent to filmmaking, which really were about story. And so I went to college and was a history major. I don't really know why. My family was, again, like, we weren't well off, so nobody I really knew had gone to college, and my parents could afford it, and I had the grades to get in, so they were like, it was like, you just need to go to college. And so I picked history kind of out of a hat, and it was really, I looked back later and I was like, why did I pick history? Like I didn't really I didn't want to be a history teacher, and that's what most people do with that degree, unless you go on to further school. But it was the stories. Like I loved reading about ancient Rome and the Egyptians, and later on getting into like, I had a emphasis in African and Asian history, and it was really high level. And I wish I could say I remembered a lot of it, but it was just the stories. I would get immersed, and I really loved it. But to the photography thing, at the end of college, I moved and transferred schools, and to be closer to my girlfriend, who became my fiance, who became my wife, and I had to pick a minor at the new school, and they were, encouraging everyone to, get their teaching certificate as their minor. And I was like, that was the first time that I was like, oh, teaching? What? Why? I don't want to teach. And then I was like, oh no, why am I getting a history degree? Which hopefully my parents don't listen to this, because they'd be like, are you joking? Because they definitely were a big help getting me through school. So yeah, I kind of had that moment, and then just had a friend who was in the photography program. And so I thought, well, that'd be cool. I'd always loved technology. And I think, as being this like kid that was a little different, we also moved a ton. I was always the new kid. I was always kind of a little bit of the outsider. It's almost like this perspective of a camera was kind of how I was seeing the world. Like I was kind of there, but not there, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And so when I started shooting, it just clicked. That's a pun right there, but very unintentional.
That was awesome.
It clicked. My photography clicked. Yeah. So but it just made sense. And so I loved going out, and at the time it was more of an art program. And so I would spend hours and days, going out with my 4x5 and just, and taking 3 photos, and then spending hours and days in the dark room. And as like an introvert, it was great. It was like, this is amazing. So it really like resonated with me. And I seemed to be good at it, I guess. Like it was the first time that I felt like people were recognizing that I was skilled or good or in some way special at this thing. Professors tended to be complimentary. I would win whatever the school like class assignment award silly thing was. And if for lack of a better way of saying it, it felt good. I was like, wow, this is not something that, it was a new experience. It was not something I thought. I just kind of assumed that you went to college and you got a job and you worked hard for your life. And my parents never worked jobs that they loved. So that's what I thought life was about. I just thought that was how no one in my family did anything like this. And so, I did 2 years of photography to complete the minor, and had friends that, graduated just before me who started doing weddings. And this was like, I graduated college in 2004. So this was like not quite the DSLR revolution for video, but it was as DSLRs were becoming a thing for photographers. So I just graduated, and I started assisting friends on weddings and whatever. And then I jumped right in. I did that for like a year, and then I started my own little wedding photography business. And did that for, 4 or 5 years. And it was great. Like I just was like, I'm working for myself, which is also not something anyone in my family did. And I'm using a camera. I mean, it was like, it was amazing. Like it just made no sense to me. But I think the wedding thing was just practical. I still had that side to me. Like this needs to be a job, Yeah. So I did that for a few years, 4 or 5 years. And I kind of hit a brick wall. and had some weddings that like people that I didn't enjoy, and I know a lot of people talk down on weddings, but at the end of the day, like I have no desire to ever do one again. But again, it was that thing of like I was a part of the story, and I was getting to like be a part of it, which I think as a kid who again like moved a lot and was always different and outside of kind of what I saw around me, it was kind of like nice. I was there because people wanted me and I belonged, and yeah, it was a special time, I think, and taught me a lot. And I think because I don't get super nervous before shoots or while I'm working, I just kind of get immersed in it. It was really great. Like I was pretty successful doing that.
Yeah. I've shot my fair share of weddings. And I know that the stress level can get pretty high. Like if you miss this shot, it's not going to happen again. So
I had so many friends around me that would talk about getting out because they were so stressed. And I was like, really? I was like, I love being at the wedding. Like, I just loved it. I loved being there. I loved like, and in a lot of ways too, because I was, the food. Oh my gosh, the food's so good. I love to eat. That was my other career possibility in college. I considered going to culinary school. So really? It was like amazing food and all that. But yeah, it was the thing. What caught up to me was after a few years of doing it and getting into a groove, and I was doing like not the highest end weddings, but higher end weddings. I was making a decent amount of money doing it, and I just got to a point where I got really creatively frustrated, I guess. You get a style and you learn those like 5 or 10 shots that every bride is going to love, and you just do it over and over. You just repeat. And once it got to that point, and I've always been that way with any jobs I've ever had, the first year of any job, I'm like, man, this is amazing. I love this. And then the second year I'm like, okay. And then the third year I'm like, okay, all right, this is repetitive. I'm done. I'm out. And I think that's something I love about filmmaking is it doesn't seem to, at least I haven't been doing this super, super long now, but it doesn't seem to ever get to that place. Every job is different, and every director I work with is different. And so yeah, to continue that story, I'm old again. So like this is like, I have probably a longer history than maybe others. And I came to cinematography later in life. And so, I hit that wall, and I basically quit shooting. I literally I took my website offline for weddings, and I still did some stuff here and there. I was doing some stuff for local magazines, and that was like not weddings. But yeah, I shut it down like hard, and I, the weddings still like trickled in here and there, but that was it. I pretty much quit. We were living in Colorado at the time, and weddings kind of shut down in the winter anyway. And when you shut your website down over the winter, nobody finds you for the summer weddings. So, I ended up taking a job at Apple, teaching. So I was teaching. So I did begin becoming a teacher for a little while. So yeah, I taught photography at the time. Aperture was like their photo thing, which is now dead, rest in peace. And I taught Aperture. I taught Final Cut 10 came out around that time, which was my first real like entry into the video world. Was Apple paying me to learn Final Cut, and so I was teaching people to edit in Final Cut, having never edited before, which was bizarre, which surprisingly worked well because I was coming at it from a different point of view. But I had great friends there who were really talented filmmakers, who were great editors. My friend Danny Rankin, and just some different people that like taught me more the art of editing. And again, like I still wasn't in the place of like wanting to do filmmaking, but yeah, it was a good thing. I did a few music videos for friends because I had the camera equipment and things that got like, people saw, like they went online, and I was like, wow, there's like 10,000 views. That's amazing. And so kind of kind of a little bit got me, started on the video path. So, we were in Boulder, Colorado, which is not a cheap place to live. I was, after a few years at Apple, was kind of feeling like maybe I was ready to go back to photography again as a profession. It like never really left me. And despite like a great job, I mean, I loved working at that company, and I learned a ton about how to interact with people professionally. I learned a lot of patience. I mean, I taught photography, but I also taught people how to check their email. I mean, it was some interesting stories out of that place. But, I was just feeling the desire to go back. I actually had a job interview at Apple for a managerial position. And the guy that interviewed me had these really, I'll never forget, he had these amazing tattoos, like sleeves up both arms, and they were just really, really beautiful. And so we ended up just talking a lot about his tattoos. And he was an artist. He had been an artist for like, that's what he had wanted to do. And he said something that like, I mean, it was like a punch in the gut, but he said, and I'm at an interview, like trying to get a promotion basically. Right. And he said, and he was a little older than me. And he was just like, yeah, you kind of get to a point in life and you just kind of have to give up on your dreams. And he said it just like that, which I was like, dude, it was like a punch to the stomach. And, and I now, like, I totally get what he means. You do have to make decisions to have a family, and you can't just, it doesn't always work out to be this like starving artist. For everybody, and no fault to people that make those decisions, he said that, and I left the interview, and I was like emotional, and I was like really upset about it, and maybe hadn't really thought that I was walking away from photography, but it hit me that I was, and not even that it was photography. I was walking away from storytelling. I was walking away from creating. And so I talked to my wife, and I gave it a couple of days, and then I called him back, and I was like, hey, thanks, but no thanks. I don't think it's for me. And
really enjoyed your tattoos. It's just not going to work.
Yeah, I was like, thanks for showing me your tattoos, man. That was really inspiring, and I do not want to do what you do. And I didn't quit my job. I was still teaching at Apple, and yeah, it was the guy would probably not remember me even, but it was like a really important moment for me. So as things tend to be coincidences that aren't coincidences, my wife lost her job not long after that.
Oh man.
Which made it hard for us to stay in an expensive place like Boulder. So we started just looking and kind of dreaming about like what was next for us, and feeling like we wanted to get out of Colorado. I won't go into all the details of it, but we ended up in Detroit. So we moved to Detroit from Boulder, which was a pretty big change.
Yeah.
And I transferred with Apple, and, the whole idea there was like, let's just change scenery. Let's get to a place that's cheaper to live. Detroit at the time was like in the news for like, you could buy a house for $1, which isn't really true. But it definitely is a cheaper place to live, from where we were in Colorado. So we moved, I transferred with Apple, and then we were there for just a few months. My experience at the new store that I was at was just horrible. It was a very different kind of place. And so I started looking for jobs, and all the while the goal was to be like, okay, we've got more freedom. We've got, financially, we don't have the burden that we did. So I can hopefully get back into freelancing, which was the plan. And then I just randomly on Twitter saw a job posting for a photographer at and this is where I worked. It was at Quicken Loans, which I was like,
okay.
I was like, what? I was like, why would I be a photographer for a mortgage company? That doesn't make any sense. And I just assumed it was like real estate or something. I was like, I don't know. I mean, mortgages aren't exactly real estate, but maybe that's what it is, photographing houses.
Yeah, it's in the same ballpark.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And and it was like photographer, videographer or something was the title. And I was like, and I was definitely feeling that from like learning editing, Final Cut at Apple, and having done a few of these like little music videos for friends. I was definitely like at this point really, really interested in video. even though I didn't really know what that meant. So I talked with my wife again and like just was like, well, maybe this is like the transition back to photography. So applied, and they brought me in, and I was kind of blown away. They had a whole like, the company was way bigger than I thought, and now they've since then they've gotten huge. I mean, they're doing Super Bowl ads now,
Right.
which is mind blowing. But yeah, they had a whole in-house agency. They had a whole video production team of like 15 or 20 people. And they had never had I guess maybe never, I don't know, had a photographer. And so they were hiring me to be kind of the photography team or the photography wing of the video production house. And I was like, my first interview even, I was like, they're not going to hire me. Cause I also just tend to like talk myself down, and like you said, it's like, I tend to think, well, I'm not any good. So, but yeah, they were really stoked on my work, and, ended up getting the job. And it was just amazing. I mean, I was right back at, in the thick of it. I had all the equipment I could want and had budgets, and I was able to hire people and run the photo team. And we did video on the side. Like I was, they did a ton of events. We were doing corporate headshots and all the normal like photography stuff you would imagine a corporation does.
Yeah.
But they do a lot of events, and they sponsor a lot of stuff. The founder of Quicken owns the Cavs, the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Oh, okay.
So like I was doing the team photos for the Cavs for a few years. Like,
oh, wow.
It's just crazy, right? Like, I mean, if you're like, I'm going to go work at a mortgage company to be a photographer, and then they're like, hey, do you want to do like the team photo for the NBA team that LeBron plays for? And I'm like, oh my gosh. Yeah. So it was, goodness. Yeah, man, it was like wild stuff. And it was amazing. And I did that for a year by myself mostly, and then they let me hire a team, which gave me a little bit of free space. So I actually started focusing on my little team of like doing videos. So instead of just shooting photos at events, it was like, I'm going to make a little recap video about it. I'm going to interview 3 or 4 people. So I was kind of just with my little team. We were just sort of hustling and making stuff, and it almost felt like my own little business in a way, because they gave me a lot of latitude to do whatever, as long as we delivered on the stuff they asked for. They were happy to take extra assets, and a lot of this was like volunteer efforts, and the city of Detroit there was always something going on, and whether that was like planting trees or helping clean up neighborhoods or whatever. So I just started making videos about that stuff. And it was an amazing like place to learn. So yeah, did that for a year or 2 or so. And then it got a little repetitive, and there's the limitations on like what you can do by yourself, or it was like 3 or 4 of us. Right. And I was also like a part of the video team, and they were doing bigger stuff. I mean, they were doing marketing material stuff. They were doing not like national ads at the time, but they were doing bigger stuff, and, working on what, looked like real videos, and, working in like real production. And so I approached my boss, and I was like, hey, I love what I do. I was like, I would really want to switch to video. And so they worked it out and transitioned me off of kind of running the photo team to being part of the video team. And so that was a big shift. I kind of stopped shooting photos entirely and moved over to that. And we were scrappy. I mean, there were, maybe 8 or 10 of us. We were real scrappy, and it was just kind of running it again like a business. So one day you're directing, next day you're shooting, next day you're editing. And it was really dynamic and a lot of fun. And I was learning so much. I mean, I was like thrown into the deep end, and it was amazing. And the team was amazing. My friends, Christina and Nate and John and everybody that I worked with, those guys were just so gracious and patient with me, and like teaching me, the ins and outs of, because they were all way more experienced than me. And so they were just teaching me, everything, and I was soaking everything up. And we as a team did that for a little bit. And then And then we went back to our bosses and said, hey, like, you know, we're sending people out to shoot who maybe aren't the best at shooting. And then we've got someone sitting in an editing chair that's not the best at editing, and they're editing footage that doesn't look great to them, you know, and that was the situation I found myself in. I knew at that point, I was like, editing is fine, but it wasn't what I wanted to do. And even directing, I do enjoy more, but it still wasn't really me. And so, yeah, we approached them, and they had every right to just be like, shut up and sit down and just keep cranking work out. But they didn't, you know, they listened, and it was a pretty amazing thing. And that's not just, you know, the team worked super hard, and the guys that had been there before me, like, really pushed hard to get better and better work. And I was just thankful to like support them. And so we transitioned the team. Everybody kind of found themselves in like more defined roles. Directors directing, maybe editing as well, editors editing, and then myself and another guy, John Mitchell, we became the cinematographers for the team, and we shot everything, and things took off from there. That was like, it exploded for the team. I mean, our director, his name's Nathaniel Sherfield, and he's out there as a freelance director now, and he's so talented and so hardworking, and he fought and pushed, and along with our producer Christina El Haddad, they fought, and they started getting broadcast work. And at first that was working with outside teams. They had to bring in DPs that were more experienced, but I would always just do whatever to find my way on those sets, oftentimes as the set photographer. Yeah. You know, the company was starting to do even bigger spots out of LA, and they would fly me out to be on set as a photographer. And I listened to everything. I would make notes. I was like taking my own behind the scene photos to study later. And
you take pictures of the people, talent, and then turn around and take pictures of all the things they put up to life.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. While they were doing takes, I would like step back and I would be like, oh, that's what a Fisher dolly is. Okay. You know, like I was learning all of these things. And so, yeah, I did that for a little bit. And then, you know, just through really the team, you know, we started pushing to say like, let us do these entirely in-house. Let's do the whole thing. We can direct it. I know I can shoot it. You know, John, the other DP, super talented also, was like, we can do this together. We have amazing post people. John also did a lot of VFX. And so like, we really wasn't anything we couldn't do. And so they trusted us with some of the smaller spots, things that would just, you know, would run for short time frames, like tied to events, or because they sponsor like NASCAR events and all this. So we would do some of those things. And then, yeah, it was now, you know, this was all like happening really fast. This was like a year.
Okay.
This was like, hey, I just learned what a DP is. Hey, I kind of want to DP. And then like within a year, it went from like that conversation to, okay, we're doing a commercial. Do you want to do it? And so that was the first spot that I did for them, was the Ricky Fowler commercial.
That was the first spot you did for them?
Yep. That was my first,
Oh, wow.
not my first thing to shoot for them, but it was my first spot. I mean, I wasn't in all the conversations. I know that the team like fought for us really hard. The people in the room probably were like, no, let's go get a DP. But you know, we were friends. I mean, we were really tight. We worked together so closely, and again, like, you know, those same people, Nathaniel and Christina and John and those guys, like they just really fought for us to be in the room and a part of the process. And we had proven ourselves on smaller stuff. And so, yeah, they just said, let's do it. So, I was floored. I was kind of blown away, but yeah, that was the first spot that we did. And, but yeah, I did that. And then from there, we did 4 or 5 or so other spots, you know, all the while, again, it's still a company and we're the in-house team. So we were still doing all the in-house stuff, you know, recording meetings and doing headshots and whatever, you know, smaller stuff that they needed, and putting in just crazy hours. It was, you know, we kind of lived there for those like couple of years.
Yeah.
But yeah, so did that. And then to, you know, bring it up to more modern, like today, after about a year of shooting some of those commercials, I just felt like it was something I wanted to do more. And being in-house, we were only going to do so many
Right.
a year. And I think we could have stayed and fought harder, because, it was not long after that they started doing Super Bowl spots. And I'm a little bit like, man, I don't know, maybe we would have had the opportunity to do those. But, that's not to say we would have. I mean, those were so high profile and so much money on the line, and they could pay anybody to do them. And so, it just sort of felt like it was time for me to move on. And as much as I loved the team and all that, it was hard being in a corporation.
Right.
Because there's all of those corporate things that go along with it. So I shot a few things on the side to kind of build my reel, and, made a transition over the course of about a year to switch to freelance. My wife was also wanting to go back to school. She got accepted to a program in Ohio that was kind of a full ride, including housing. And it just seemed like the right time. It was the right time for me. And I think, especially for her and our family, that, we just kind of jumped in with both feet, and I left the job and have been freelancing now for 4 years or so, 3 years, something like that.
Wow.
That brings it up to today.
That's amazing. That is a journey.
Yeah. It's really wild. I mean, I don't think about it often, but I was sitting down kind of preparing to talk to you, and I was like, man, it's been a wild ride, and to have all of this. I'm now 41, and it's just a different journey. I think so many people grow up either knowing they want to do this, or like they get into it in college or when they're younger. And none of this stuff was on my radar until I was, I think I got the job at Quicken when I was 32. And that was my first real, oh, wow, these people do videos. Yeah. This is how videos are made. And to see it. And then it was a journey. And I don't know that I think I DP'd my first real thing that I would probably want no one to actually see, but when I was 34.
Wow.
And so, or 33, 34, something like that. So it was around that time that I was making that switch. So
that's amazing.
And it's kind of crazy to look back and go, wow, I never thought that moving to Detroit and taking a job at a mortgage company would, would land me in this place where I'm I have a career now as a cinematographer. It's really been a really wild ride.
Man. So black and white TV to color TV to movie clerk to history usher to history major, then to wedding photographer. Wow. Apple teacher, Detroit Apple teacher, admiring tattoo, I don't know.
Yeah. Admiring a man's lovely tattoos. Yes.
Mortgage company, taking LeBron's headshots, DPing Quicken Loan commercials. Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. It's wild. It's crazy.
You've had an exciting journey. It just shows to me that you really can pick any path, and as long as you can just find it anywhere. You can find the path to cinematography or filmmaking in any road you take.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to just be going to film school.
No, I think that's so true. I think, and I don't fault anybody for how they get to where they get, and I still have good friends that work at the mortgage company, and it was a great job for them. And when I left, it was the right choice for me. I think that the common theme along all of it was just being willing and really honestly just working. I mean, a lot of it sounds like it just sort of happened in a way.
Yeah.
But, even that first commercial, it was constant work. It was just always learning and pushing. And I had amazing help. Like I said, the guys that I worked with, the folks that I worked with were always, very patient with me and teaching me and there for my, all of my mistakes. And I'm so thankful that those mistakes were happening, in a place that was safe in a way. I had people to back me up, and, I had a great team around me, and I had a job, I was doing it in a way that my career would not be what it is without that. that was film school. The mortgage company was film school for me.
And it sounds like the people that were on your team, like y'all had each other's back. Y'all were kind of like a family, and y'all like found your positions in this video crew.
Yeah.
How do you go about meeting people now and networking now to build that, I guess, ever evolving team?
Yeah, it's harder. For sure. I do oftentimes, like, I miss the team. I miss, like, we were with each other, 50, 70 hours a week for years, it was crazy. So there are times that I miss that. And I think being a freelance DP, you do find your downtime is kind of, especially living in a small town now in Ohio, like, it can get lonely, for lack of a better way to say it. And so, yeah, relationships are just so vital to this business. And so important to me. I can't say that I've like 100% found, and maybe I never will find that what was like a really special thing with that team. But yeah, I spend, before the pandemic, it was just, I was constantly reaching out to people to get coffee. So just anybody that was anywhere near me that I could get in my car and drive to, and that had work that I was like, yeah, I'd be stoked to work with them. I just would hit the road and meet people as much as I could. That was kind of, I don't really even sort of think of it as networking, I think. And this kind of gets me in trouble sometimes, but I tend to like bring a lot of emotion to the table in terms, especially of like, I ultimately, like, the goal is I want to meet that special group of people. I want to be, and I do have those relationships now. If anybody I know that I work with now, I love you. I'm not saying that's not the case, but yeah, it's very personal to me. And sometimes, like, that's not the way jobs go. Oftentimes you're just there to do the job and they just want you to do it and do it well. And then you move on. But I am always kind of looking for that, like, those deeper connections. I am looking for those people that I'm like, yeah, today we're making a video for an insurance commercial, but like, I legitimately just want to hang out with you. And so, because I think that work is better when you're connected. So that was kind of pre-pandemic. It was a lot of constantly reaching out and sending people my reel and just trying to meet as many people, which was like such a head game for me. It's super hard for me to put myself out there like that.
Yeah.
And, we talked about the pit earlier, and that, meeting people can do that for me too. I can be pretty talkative, but in my nature, I'm much more of an introvert. And so, when I meet people, it's kind of a big deal, to me, even though it's just a meeting. And so
yeah,
it can kind of
completely.
Yeah. And especially, if you meet people, oh my goodness. And then you're like, they're so cool and they're so great and I want to work with them. And then they don't call you. You're like, oh, why didn't they call me? They're sitting at home.
Enough.
They're just sitting at home and thinking about how they hate me. That's all they're thinking about, and that was a huge hurdle for me as moving into freelance. My first year was like, it was kind of brutal in that way because, yeah, I mean, the reality is you're not going to work with everybody. And oftentimes it has nothing to do with you. They just didn't have a job for you that made sense. Or, a lot of people here have in-house teams. And so they're going to use the in-house people. And so, yeah, it was super hard for like that first year for me to wrap my head around it. And I actually had a great meeting with somebody when I first moved here, and then didn't work with him. And then I circled back with him like 6 months later. And in that 6 months, I'm playing all those like things in my head, like, oh, this guy hated me and my work's not good enough and, whatever, blah, 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 blah. And I circled back with him, and this was super important to me. Like, I still think about it all the time. I met with him again 6 or 8 or something 9 months later. And I was like, it's great. I saw the thing you did. It's so cool. And whatever, we're just chatting. And then I was kind of like, yeah, I'd love to get on set and like work with you, man. Like your work's great, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, no, I think about working with you all the time. I just haven't had a project that like meets the level of bringing you on. Right. Like, and my head exploded. I was like, what? I was like, no, don't you know that, like, I was like, I'm terrible. I like play that in my head so much. And yeah. And I now, like, I lean on that a lot because I can go to dark places and it's just like so not true.
Yeah.
And since then, like, we've worked together a bunch and he's one of my favorite people to work with in town and always love getting on set with him. And there was just that blip of a moment where I was just so unsure of myself. And it was such a great thing to hear, right? Like, it's always great to get validation. And so I can go to those places and get dark when I'm networking, but I now feel much more confident and just try to lean on and go, no, like, I do know what I'm doing. And yeah, I'm not the worst.
No, you're definitely not the worst.
It's so creative. The creative mind, like, it's such a mess, man. Like, I have all these friends that say the same kind of stuff, and I'm like, people that I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, you're amazing. And it's just it's so wild how it works.
Let's talk about some of the work that I really love and is not the worst, because I don't believe I don't believe anything that you're telling me about that kind of stuff.
Yes. Appreciated. Much appreciated.
One of the questions I was going to ask you is, how did you get onto all these Quicken Loan ads? Because
yeah.
But now I know.
It gets asked all the time. People are like, "What? You've done some big stuff. Why is it all for one company?"
But there's the two, I guess, series of ads that are my favorite. One is really close to my heart, and it seems like it may have been a lower budget project, but I laughed so hard, was the Business Link ads with the guy and the dinosaur.
Yeah. I love those so much. They're not the thing that I like go to for my, like, look how cool I am as a cinematographer. But they were definitely a highlight of a project for me, for sure.
Yes, I think for those of you listening, I would say they do show up on the reel, but you have to watch those. You have to watch that whole series in one sitting.
Yeah. Yep. They do.
That guy is hilarious.
Yeah,
oh my
I forget
garnish!
his last name.
I laughed
Tom.
out loud at the computer. Like, I was watching it probably like 1:00 in the morning, and I was, oh my garnish!
No, if you watch the thing, there's the spot where he's behind the van or whatever, the truck kind of van thing, and he's doing all of his garnishes. It's the one where you see his face in the magnifying glass. That shot where it cuts. It had to cut because I started, like, shaking because I was trying not to laugh. He was so funny on set. And I would love to, I don't have all that footage, of course, because it goes to the production company. And right. I would love to see the outtakes from that. I mean, I said earlier, I'm pretty calm and chill on set. And I try to stay, like, I can get sucked into the story, though, of what's happening and kind of, this may sound bad, but I can kind of forget that I'm shooting. And although I think that serves me well, because it really, like,
in the moment.
Yeah, I'm in the moment. And I think I'm still, obviously I'm mostly operating on jobs that I do. And so it really does, like, take me to another level of, like, connecting with the story that's happening and shooting. And I love when that happens. But I think that was the only time where I was like, I can't keep shooting this. I had to stop looking at him. Like, I had to just, like, frame the shot. It was in an easy rig and I had to look away. I mean, it was, he's genius. Like, I forget his last name, Tom something, but that was all, to give credit where credit is really due. That was all, the director on that was just an amazing comedy director. He goes by the name Brother Willis, and highly recommend you go check out his work. He's with a production company that I work with out of Detroit called We the People. And yeah, Brother Willis is his like directing name. His name's Adam, and we're good friends now. And like it was such a blast working with him on that and we did a few things together. There's also like a Remax thing that's on my site that with some little kids. House. Yeah, the tiny house, and that was Adam as well. And yeah, it was such a blast. Like, all of those little jokes. What was the garnish company called? You just said it.
Oh My Garnish.
Oh My Garnish. I'm going to pull it up here.
I'm a big fan of puns. And so that one just like, I also really want a ProMaster or Sprinter van kind of thing. So also spoke to my soul as well.
Those were so fun to be around. I was really, really tempted. I'm not a gear guy though. So like I have friends that have like their own little production vehicles, and I don't really own anything. And so I don't have a super need for it. So yeah, so there was the dinosaur party for a roaring good time. The whole series was called Jack of All Trades.
Yes.
Yeah, so fun. And I watch a lot of comedy stuff. I mean, I was a huge fan of The Office.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many times I've rewatched that whole thing. And yeah, that was a super, super fun project to work on. We tried to keep everything simple. It was about letting him act and letting Adam direct, and the setups were pretty minimal, but I think we achieved a good look. That was the first time it was actually colored at Company 3. And
oh wow.
And even when the producers were like, yeah, we're going to send this to Company 3 to color, I was like, what? I just, again, like in my own self-doubt, I was like, but I shot it. Like, of course it's terrible. Like, why would you do that? So yeah, another confirmation that I was like, oh, okay, wow, you're going to spend money to make this look even better. It's cool. So yeah, it was a blast to work on. And yeah, the whole team was a dream. And it was like, that was pretty early on when I went freelance. So it was a good transition. I think it was a year. It was about a year after I left.
Okay.
The job.
So talking back about the Ricky Fowler commercial, this is your first big like spot as a DP. You've shot things before. How did you prepare for that ad? And what did the camera lighting package look like while you were shooting that?
I kind of wish we had a lot of time on that compared to I think what I'm used to now. Now most jobs it's like if you get 2 weeks, it's great to prepare for something, which of course isn't paid for. It's just your own time to prepare. Yeah. But yeah, it was amazing. I think because I was still in house, I did get to spend a little more time preparing for that. And again, because we had the team and we were so tight, it really helped a lot. I could bounce a lot of ideas off people. So we approached that a little differently. On the in-house team, we had 2 DPs. It was me and another guy, John Mitchell, he's actually still there at the company and is their main cinematographer.
Okay.
So we kind of tackled it together, although, that's like a little weird to have 2 people being the DP. So I kind of ended up taking the lead a little more in terms of the communication with the producers and the crew. And then John was really just like right there with me every step of the way, helping me make decisions and all that. And so, that was kind of how we started out the approach. It was also a travel job, which I hadn't really done much of before that. And so we were shooting in Florida, and then being that it was like a pseudo, I guess not a pseudo celebrity. He's a celebrity.
Yeah.
In the golf world, especially Ricky Fowler's really well known. And there are tons and tons of contracts and rules about how things work. And so we only had him for, I think the total for the day was 8 hours. And so the locations were just critical. We needed to get that. There's the opening shot that's on the golf course. And then we moved to the house. And so everything else was shot, at the same house. And so shooting time, we probably really only had him for like 6 hours for that because of arrival and wardrobe and lunch and everything else that eats it up. So our director on that, Nathaniel Sherfield, He is really meticulous, and I think I learned a lot from him in our time working together because he's such a great planner. And so we had to know to I would say to the minute, but probably to the second, like what we were doing at any given time. So everything had to be planned beforehand. We mostly did that. I mostly did that just with my own like overheads and sketches and plans. We also utilized a little bit, and this was like really early days of Matt Workman's cinematography database.
Oh, yeah.
Now it's called Cinetracer. It was like back in the early days of that when it was still on Cinema 4D.
Yeah.
So we utilized that a little bit as well to help kind of previs the shots and get a sense of the lighting. But most of that shoot was planned on paper. We had a great gaffer and crew in Florida. Jay Shropshire, I think was his name. So Jay was critical in like pulling off a lot of the logistics because we were remote and didn't really arrive until just a few days before the shoot. So everything happened on paper. We were able to like plan for that short amount of time. And then what we decided to do is, because we had the advantage of two DPs, originally it was going to be, let's just have two DPs. So I would shoot one scene and then our director would move over to the other camera setup and that would be ready to go. And our other DP would take over and that was kind of the idea, like let's run 2 units all day.
Yeah.
But we actually decided, and I think it worked out well, to be more efficient. We actually I essentially ran the A unit, and then our other cinematographer, John Mitchell, he ran the B, and he had a few shots, like pickup shots and things and details that he got throughout the day. But mostly he was actually just setting us up. So he would set up the next setup. He had an AC, and he would work with our gaffer and our team. But yeah, working off our plans, he would set things up. And then I would walk over and take his camera. And then he would take my camera from the previous setup and he would take it to the next setup.
Wow.
And help, dial all of that in. And obviously that's like
you got to have a certain level of trust. Like y'all got to be part of the same body, I guess.
Yeah, and I think because we had so much time to plan, it wouldn't have worked out otherwise. Like I can't imagine doing that on another, although we actually did do it on a few shoots. Because again, we were there. So it was a way we could work. So yeah, he and I were really, really tight. I mean, I think of John as like a little brother. He'd probably get mad if I called him my little brother, but, I'm a taller guy and he's actually also kind of short. So it works out. So little brother John, I don't know if he'll listen to this. He'll probably be super mad at me, but
I'm 6'6", so everyone's little to me.
Oh yeah, everyone's little to you. Yeah, I feel
Except
bad
for
seeing
LeBron
I'm tall.
James.
No, oh man, yeah, you want to feel short, just go to it. Yeah, that's insane. But yeah, so John and I are real tight, and we kind of have we just have a great relationship, and we would butt heads and argue and differ about how the lighting should be. But in the end of the day, we were always, that relationship was just strong. And so we would always come back together. There was never a forget you, I'm done, we're not working together. It was always productive. And so, yeah, we were super close. And the same with everybody. I mean, Nathaniel and our producer, Christina, we were just all so tight. It really was like a family. And so, I'm constantly bouncing my lighting ideas off of Nate and John and everybody. And we were able to really hone in that schedule. So yeah, that's how we worked on the day, based on the plans that we came up with before, which thankfully mostly we stuck to. There wasn't a whole lot of ad-libbing on the day to figure out lighting or anything. It was pretty well dialed in. Of course, it was a decent budget. I had never worked on anything with that much money. And so, we more or less had what we needed. They were super supportive because they do one spot with him a year, and it had to be great. So, yeah, we had all the toys, the generator, the 12Ks. I couldn't tell you all the specific things that we used. But I was really
big toys.
Yeah, it was all the big toys. We shot on Alexa Mini, So we had two of those, and then these are still to this day like my favorite lenses. We were able to get a set of the Hawk vintage V-Lite 74s,
Okay.
which are modern lenses, but they were kind of manufactured in a vintage way. And
I don't know much about the Hawks. I just know that I've never seen anything shot on them that I didn't like.
they're so great. They're still sharp in a way that I think a lot of anamorphic stuff isn't. But then the backgrounds still do that weird swirly bokeh that looks so nice. And that was largely why those lenses were chosen. It was for that look, because we knew we had to shoot a ton of stuff on phones, that was part of additional assets kind of stuff. And we wanted that stuff to like have a look and not just be like a guy's hand and then the grass of the golf course, so it was to create some texture. And so we had all the toys essentially. But it really was like more of a logistics question at that point, and knowing that, did I have all of the pieces in all of the places? Because if I was going to have this other unit setting up for me ahead of time, well, now you go from like, I have one 4K, I need two. Well, if I need two, do I really need four? So it was a lot of that. And of course, like, we had a good budget, but we still had to cut things. There were things that we still had to lose to make sense. And so with the budget, so
that's one thing. Brent Christie, when I had him on, it's like I've been on small sets and big sets like Iron Man, but even on Iron Man, they were cutting stuff all the time. It's like, there's never enough.
No, there never is. It's always a question of like, what do you need? And you always could use more. And so you have to be, and I think that's a thing that was a really good lesson I learned, was just at a certain level, Brent's an amazing cinematographer, and you've had other great people on, and there's so many great people out there. I think at a certain point, it kind of stops becoming about like, can you make a good image?
Yeah.
And more about, how you collaborate with the team, and how you, honestly, managing budgets is a big part of it, because you don't just get to say, I want everything. You're not going to get it, like and it doesn't matter how big the job is. Like, there's a cutoff at a certain point, and it's almost like the bigger the job, the more stuff you feel like you need. I've had techno cranes on jobs where you're like having conversations with the team and going, do we need 2 techno cranes? and it wasn't like, because we were being ridiculous. It was like, well, yeah, kind of, we do. And you go, no, we can't get 2 techno cranes, because the one was a reach, And so I do remember on one of the shoots where we had the techno operator guy, I forget his last name, Mark. We were trying to solve some problem on the Tech Scout of like how we were going to shoot, because we did another shoot where we were doing this simultaneous jumping around thing, and he just kind of was like, well, I think what would work great for those shots is like if we brought in another techno. And the producer just like gave me the look.
Get
it's
out
like,
of here.
She was like, don't you dare even come back to me and say you need a second techno crane. I was like, oh no, we'll figure it out another way. It's okay. So yeah, it's always true. You always could use more. But I think it also teaches you to like think about what you really need. And oftentimes it's not as, in a weird way, it's like not as much as you think.
Yeah.
To make things look really good. So,
well, I think you make things look really good. Whatever cuts you have to make.
Well, thanks, man. I appreciate it.
I know people are going to want to connect with you and find your work. I would recommend, like I said, go watch those business link ads. Check out everything on his website. Where would you say that the best way people can connect with you and see your stuff?
Yeah. Well, the website's just rayrushing.tv. I'm pretty much, because the name is a little bit unique. Ray Rushing is kind of my social media thing anywhere. I probably spend most of my time on Instagram. So just at Ray Rushing on Instagram, or the new hotness, Clubhouse, man. I'm on Clubhouse all the time. So I think I'm also just at Ray Rushing on Clubhouse, so that's a good place to chat.
Ray Rushing, thanks you again for being on the show on Hometown Hollywood. I can't do it.
Hometown Hollywood.
And that's it. Thank you for listening. I hope this helps you do great work, be the artist you want to be, and helps you not to be afraid to jump in with both feet and make things happen in your film community. Be sure to follow Ray on his Instagram and website. Feel free to send him a DM and show him some love, because he definitely deserves it. I'll leave a bunch of links in the show notes so you can find his amazing work. For this episode, I hired a famous rapper to tell you what to do after listening to the show.
You know what to do. Go to iTunes. You better get all your homies to leave some reviews.
Yeah, I didn't have a huge budget to pay him, so that's all I got. Thanks again for listening, and stay tuned for our next awesome guest on the Hometown Hollywood podcast.
And then, of course, there's a lot of people in Atlanta, but I don't want to live in Atlanta.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge fan of Atlanta, so we'll see. I would probably be a great place to be, but...
That's why they have that song, Atlanta, ooh, nah, nah.
Exactly.
And with that, we'll close.
Emphasis on the ooh. I love it.